Okay, so good afternoon. Welcome to the POLIS Conference and welcome to this session called In the Corridors of the Transport European Network. Before starting, I am giving the floor to Ivo Cré for a presentation of the housekeeping rules. Ivo, please.
Yes, thank you, Françoise. Because it's the first day, a quick update on the housekeeping rules for this session. If you have a question or you want to give a comment, you can use the chat function, but make sure that in the chat function you are in the session mode. Otherwise, all conference participants can read what you write. We will not have polls in this session, so don't bother about that instruction. If you want to view who is in your session, you can go to the option People, and then also click Session, and then you can see whoever is in that in our session attending. If you want to maximize your screen, you can hide the chat and double click on the presentation or on the speaker, and then you see actually you select what you want to see in the most largest form. And to finalize my short housekeeping rules, after the session you can try the networking options. It's really practical and really fun. You can communicate with other session participants or conference participants, and you can also take a quick look at the exhibition area, which is a space where a lot of the projects that are presented or the issues that are presented are coming together. So you can have a look there. Also tweet about our event, use the hashtag POLIS20 and start the communication on Twitter then. So Françoise, the floor is yours. We still try to get Herald Ruijters in as a speaker. I hope that that works over the next minutes. I will stop sharing and I give the floor to you, Françoise.
Okay, thank you, Ivo. So welcome to this session. As you saw on the program, this session is divided in 2 parts, but would last 2 hours instead of 1 hour and 30 minutes. The first part will relate to the revision of the Trans-European Network of Transport on the regulation. And in the second part, 5 distinguished speakers will present you projects led by local and regional authorities who make the TEN-T a reality. So now we start immediately with the revision of the regulation. So perhaps a quick reminder to explain you what is it about. So you know that the Commission has started the revision of the regulation concerning the EU guidelines for the development of the Trans-European Transport Network last year. And earlier this year, the network ERRIN adopted an opinion focused on urban nodes and the research and innovation aspect of the guideline. The opinion was then endorsed by POLIS, and now POLIS and ERRIN have joined their forces in a task force, literally an ad hoc working group, aiming to propose concrete recommendations in this field. So perhaps just a few words on the regulation. The current guidelines recognize and formalize the role of urban nodes in this transport network as important hubs that facilitate the flow of people and goods. And the introduction of the concept of urban node was incredibly important for us. In this revision today, we have an opportunity to work further on the better integration of the urban node in the guidelines. And I think that Herald Ruijters is not with us yet. I would like just perhaps to present you very briefly our key recommendation and after we will engage a discussion on this. So our key recommendations include the need for a more explicit definition of urban nodes to allow them to be more effective in European transport corridors, regional development, and social cohesion. The need to expand the criteria of urban nodes to include the presence of transformation, industrial and research and innovation nodes. The needs to strengthen innovation. For example, the TEN-T needs to evolve further to take into account new developments in transport, such as digitalization and automation to support the Green Deal objective. And this could be supported by improved multi-level governance and increased emphasis on intermodality and given urban nodes equal priority are others in this regulation. So, Ivo, I need your help now.
Yes, we have an issue, a technical issue on the side of Herald Ruijters, so there's an audio problem. So we are trying to fix it as soon as possible. Also, from his side, I hope they can solve it too. We're offering some options there, but I think it's best that we start with the presentation of the recommendations.
Okay, so now we will present you this recommendation in details. And Ivo, could you share with us the presentation, please, on the screen? I don't see the presentation, Ivo. We have carried out our works on key recommendation and propose amendments to the relevant article in this regulation, taking into consideration the EU added value of the proposal, the interest for the regional and local level as well as citizen, and how it contributes to the EU Green Deal. So now I will give the floor to my colleagues to present you this proposal. Next slide, please. Next. Okay, this is a map of the current network. Okay, so I will give now the floor to Reinhard Henke from the Frankfurt Region and Jürgen Neumüller from Berlin-Brandenburg regions for the presentation of the first set of recommendations. Reinhard, please, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. And can I have the next slide, please? And the next slide with the text now. Well, expanding the definition. We looked at one of the core concepts, the urban nodes. We are definition known for functional complexities beyond the single administrative cities. We opt for a definition that accounts for cities, industrial areas, agglomerations, or metropolitan areas. We are convinced that this is the only way to address the complex interdependencies between transports, local, regional, national, and international across the various modes. The third functional urban area definition to our notion is too schematic because they address the urban core and the commuter zone. We think that urban nodes must include peri-urban and regional areas. They must also account for polycentric regions with more than one densely populated area. To engage with Eurostat and colleagues to revisit the definition framework. And on the next slide, if I can have this now. This is what we propose. Our definition proposal includes that we are looking at the functional area, thus the area defined by the functions relevant for transport, This should include one or more core cities and their surroundings. It should be looking at the structure of the trans-European transport network, ports of all sorts, logistic platforms and freight terminals. There we would be focusing on the interconnection between the modal hubs, and we would be focusing on the connection with the regional and local transport infrastructure. And for the next slide, I will hand over to my colleague, who is Jürgen Neumüller, and also looking at the screen.
Okay. Thank you very much, Reinhard. Yes, Jürgen Neumüller is my name. I'm representing the Berlin-Brandenburg region, capital region of Germany. And for sure, Berlin is and will be an urban node, but we have in our working group looked deeper into the issue, and we came up that there should be, let's say, additional specific criteria to define urban nodes. So we had a short look to the number of 88 urban nodes defined already, and according to our opinion, it's not valuable to propose single urban nodes to complete the list simply, let's put it like this. So there should be some criteria. What should be an urban node? Is it exclusively related to the number of inhabitants, or are there other criteria to be dealt with? So our intention is that we should not ignore any valuable node for the network. So first of all, it should be based on some geographical locations, of course. Here we have to take into account national and regional borders. And we should have at least, let's say, two functions which should be investigated in more depth. One is the connector function, let's say, connecting the core and the comprehensive network. And the second will be, we called it in our working group a hub function. So this hub function should be related to regional economic or commuting issues. Here are some examples, like it could be transformation nodes, multi-industrial nodes, research and innovation nodes, visitor economy nodes, which are of course very much related to tourism and to manage the number of people who are commuting. And of course, last but not least, also digital nodes. When defining these nodes with these criteria, we should also put focus on how they will be dealt with in a planning way. So there should be some strategic and operational planning frameworks established and in this context. And this should cope with all functionalities which are related to urban nodes. And in order to monitor how they develop and how they make progress, there should be a commitment on the monitoring on the mobility status. And we propose here the SAM-I indicators, which are very broad indicators ranging from pollutant emissions, noise, safety, but also addresses multimodal integration indicators, which are in our, when it's about connecting local and regional and transnational transport, of course, very important. So we are speaking about passenger transport as well as freight transport. That should be, let's say, the set of criteria. It's not finalized yet, but it's a proposal to widen the view, let's say, when defining urban nodes, not only on a size basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Reinhard and Jürgen, for this presentation. I don't know if you are at this stage any burning question from the audience on these 2 points, the definition and how we can have over criteria for the selection of urban node in the regulation. Yes. Siegfried, perhaps Siegfried, you can take the floor directly.
Yes.
If you can.
Well, I'm reading this question by who is asking whether we would assume that SUMP is a relevant planning framework for the newly defined urban nodes. And yes, indeed, we think so, because this is where the two streams of thinking coincide in our region. We are producing a mobility plan, a master plan mobility. This is the title we are giving it to it, and this is our strategic urban mobility plan. And this strategic urban mobility plan is playing in the area that we consider as the functional region, which is then also for the outside world, talking about the context we're talking about here, the urban node that we are applying.
I would like to add maybe to
Yes.
this answer. We named it here a strategic and operational planning frameworks because it should be, let's say, not exclusively SUMP, but of course SUMP is a relevant element in it. We should consider that these are, let's say, regional aspects also included. As for Berlin, I can say we don't stop at the city borders here. We have a SUMP for the city of Berlin, but this planning framework should go beyond, let's say, it should also cover the logistic centers which are around Berlin. And yeah, taking more attention also to the freight aspect, maybe.
Okay. Thank you, Jürgen. Perhaps I would like just to add that SUMP is very important, of course, but perhaps to not, it will be perhaps more relevant to indicate that we need to use the indicator of the SUMP and not the SUMP itself, because we don't want to discriminate some cities or regions which didn't have now yet voted or a SUMP today, but perhaps they already established some strategic and operational planning. So SUMP is important, but I think that we need to make a reference, a strong reference to the indicator, the goal of the SUMP in the regulation. Okay, so I think that now we will pursue with the presentation of a second set of recommendations. So I would like to invite Vivian Stribos Coen Mekers from the province of Gelderland to take the floor. Vivian, please.
Yes, thank you, Françoise. My name is Vivian Stribos. I'm representing the Gelderland at the EU institutions in Brussels, also on mobility. Referring to, I guess it was Reinhard, no, it was Jürgen, about urban nodes that you have different criteria, and also one of them is, or more of them, referring to innovation, like research and innovation nodes and digitalized nodes. So if we want to boost up the innovation in total in the network, you have to strengthen the innovation in the urban nodes, because they can build this modern integrated system. So in the end, we all want to have a decarbonized and efficient and inclusive growth in 2050. further to innovate, because the current regulation is actually not prepared yet of this digital transition and transport, because it used to be focused on the physical infrastructure, but now it's very important to have a focus on the innovation in ITS and intelligent transport system and smart applications. Also in cooperative, connected, automated mobility. So also to address congestion and pollution in urban nodes. And maybe we have already a taste of it during this this confinement. Because of the pandemic, people already enjoy, I guess, less cars in the cities and less congestion. And so all in all, our recommendation to strengthen the innovation in urban nodes, I guess that will be accelerate the achievement of our 2030-2050 objective. And so we can achieve the 10T total framework. In the next slide, there is really like on the details of the amendments we would suggest, but I guess that will be for background information. I will not go into detail to that. And then I really would like to give the floor to my colleague, the Senior Policy Advisor, Coen Mekers.
Yes, thank you very much, Vivian. And I see Mr. Herald Ruijters is in the house, so hopefully you can hear and see us. My name is Coen Mekers, Province of Gelderland, and I'm responsible for mobility and European affairs. I'm going to talk a few minutes about intermodality and sustainability. Let me first say this: the 10T network as a whole performs the best if the whole system is working well. So the corridors should work perfectly, as well as the nodes and functional urban areas. So connecting the lines with the dots, so to say, and not the other way around, maybe also the other way around. And in this intermodality and the possibility to switch between modes of transport is very important to achieve a sustainable system and also the goals of the Green Deal, for example, because intermodality will boost modal shifts to more sustainable modes. And this concerns, as already has been said, goods and passengers. But a lot of work has to be done in the modes itself yet. For example, the deployment of alternative fuels in the various modes is very important. And for example, on the Rhine-Alpine corridor, a shift to inland shipping is necessary. But we have to reduce as well and minimize external effects or, let's say, pollutants of inland shipping, like NOx or nitrogen as well. And this is a big challenge for the inland shipping companies and essential for the next years and decades. So this should also be addressed in the new 10T regulation, the pollutants side of transport. And finally, urban and regional nodes are important for climate neutrality. And an integrated mobility planning framework like SUMP should be highlighted as part of a change to really smart cities and smart corridors. Such an integrated and also interregional approach is important, is very important. And for example, is one of the main issues in the EGTC Rhine-Alpine, as a lot of you will know. So it's about modal shift, it's about transport and energy efficiency, it's about passengers and goods, and it's about integrated planning. And you can see on the next slide, please, what this means for the concrete amendments. And as Vivian already said, I won't go into the details, but this is, let's say, a more the rationale for our amendments of the ERRIN-Polis group. Thank you. Françoise, up to you.
Thank you, Coen. Thank you, Vivian, for this presentation. And now I'm very happy to welcome Reinhard Henke, Director at the European Commission, DG Move. So Herald, I don't know if you want to react or to wait perhaps the end of the presentation. Yes, okay. Okay, so now I immediately give the floor to my colleague Cédric Aubouin from the Ile-de-France region for the last presentation. Cédric, please.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So I'm happy to be here today, even if it's through a screen. So I'm Cédric Aubouin. I represent the Ile-de-France region. Region, if you don't know where it is, Paris region, if you don't know where is Ile-de-France. To introduce, in France, regions are local authorities in charge of several competencies and particularly the transport infrastructure development. Over the years, the TEN-T regulation has been instrumental in transforming the existing patchwork of European Union transport modes into a more integrated network, and the current guidelines recognize and formalize the role of urban nodes in these transport networks as important hubs that facilitate the flow of people and goods. The current revision is for us an opportunity to develop this work even further. So next slide, please. Thank you. First of all, the Ile-de-France region concentrates 12.2 million population in an area only covering 2% of the French territory. However, the Ile-de-France region gathers 18% of the country's population and close to 31% of the national GDP, along with world-class research and education hubs, 6 million jobs, and 2.9 million business tourists from European Union. Paris and the region are located in junction of the TEN-T network. With this short presentation, I just wanted to underline the importance of connections between long-distance transport infrastructure and local, regional, and national networks. In order to allow for smooth transfers on TEN-T journey and help reduce bottlenecks, in urban nodes. Furthermore, they also serve a both connection point and first and last mile for a long distance journeys. Journeys on a European scale must integrate the entirety of the components of the transport chain from A to B and thus erase all the gaps between links. And next slide, please. To be efficient and to achieve the integration of urban nodes in the TEN-T network, local authorities need to upgrade the infrastructure, the connectivity and services to the same level across Europe. So the integration of urban nodes and in the TEN-T has a crucial role to play for both passenger and freight transport. This is the reason why we recommend to amend Article 6, as you can see on your screen, to introduce the notion of connecting point between long-distance traffic and regional transport network with connectivity and services. Next slide, please. Thank you. In the European Union, if the European Union wants to achieve the implementation of the Green Deal measures, and the Commission must intensify its effort on urban nodes. Despite the regulation, the urban nodes priority has received little funding in the TEN-T policy, in spite of the fact that virtually all journeys in France cover less than 80 kilometers and are concentrated in urban areas. And it is similar situation in other European countries. This urban concentration produces issues in peri-urban areas and urban centers with an often excessive use of individual vehicles. Such a rebalancing would help respond to current and future challenges while providing European citizens with smart, efficient, and sustainable transport. Several of the European Union's overarching policy objectives, the Green Deal and the response of the COVID pandemic, cannot be achieved without a stronger integration of urban nodes in urban transport policy. For example, in the Paris region, the multimodal hub of La Défense, like the picture you can see on the slide, where are located the head offices of the largest French and international companies, illustrate this point. Almost 200,000 people per day work in this area, and there are 2 million business tourists per year. Actually, 3 train lines, 1 metro, several bus lines with 2 bus terminals receiving local traffic, and 2 motorways serve the multimodal exchange hub. And this hub fully participates in the integrated European system by favoring a modal shift from individual motorized modes toward shared public transport. And the major connection between local, national, and European network and the upcoming arrival of the Area E commuter train in 2022 and Line 15 West of the Grand Paris Express Metro in 2027 will further connect and airports and help reaffirm its role of as a major European hub. Next slide, please. The servicing of the La Défense hub will reinforce. Thank you. The servicing of the La Défense hub will reinforce access to the first and last miles of the Atlantic corridor to the entire mobility chain. So we recommend to amend Article 4 and 6, as you can see, to recognize that urban nodes such as La Défense create an optimal synergy between long distance and regional and local traffic flows in urban nodes. In conclusion, you have understood that the importance for us to see a better integration of urban nodes into TNT networks by giving them the same importance as other priorities. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Cédric. And now I will call Herald to join the virtual stage for a reaction on this concrete proposal, and also if you can, Herald, perhaps to present the main feature of the revision and the state of play within the Commission.
Thank you very much, Françoise, and I hope that you all can hear me well now. Good. I have been hearing you all the time, and I've been seeing you all the time, but you couldn't see me or hear me, and I don't know what was behind this new hop-in. Even after 9 months of functioning in a virtual mode and having used all kind of different systems, it gave a blockage today. I apologize for that. I'm really sorry, because it gives you unnecessary stress on your side, and I can confirm to you after 9 months, it's still evil on my side. It gave me quite a bit of stress to join you. I'm very happy that I could see all of you here and hear you. Ladies and gentlemen, I will try to be to the point as much as I can, and at the same time develop a little bit into detail. As an introductory word, I think I should underline, even if it is really well known to all of us, that we are working, of course, on the Line Commission on this Green Deal that was launched last year, December, with a communication, and it was further deepened with the Climate Targets Plan that was published on the 17th of September late. And this climate target plan has set the ambition quite high, because we want to reduce 55 plus, or at least 55% the CO2 by 2030 in order to get to this 90% reduction by 2050. And our Commissioner, Adina Valian, will follow up on it with her strategy to be published as expected on the 9th of December, a sustainable and smart mobility strategy. And in 2021, this will be declined in a number of proposals and also the years after, but in particular in 2021, in the first quarter for aviation and maritime, in the second quarter with a fuel package, amongst which we will have the Alternative Fuel Infrastructure Directive, and in the third quarter with an infrastructure package, amongst which we will have the rail freight corridors, the TEN-T, the ITS, but also further aspects which will be very important, and we have touched upon here today, the ITS, the NAIADES package, and certainly also the urban mobility package. So all of these tie together then in the third quarter, and further messages will certainly come in quarter 4 and 2022, 3 and so forth. But this will be a quite important stretch that we are going from here to end of quarter 3. And I'm grateful, Guaspare, that you devote this attention to the revision here today in this conference with the ERRIN and POLIS networks fully supporting the work that you have been putting together in order to give already a would say, deep into this TEN-T revision process, which of course will be linked closely, as I said, to the rail freight corridors, to the ITS, to the urban mobility package. So in a one go, in one big go in the third quarter. Now you have been at the beginning, Jürgen and Reinhard, speaking to the audience about the definition. And the definition is something quite important. We discussed about it, Françoise, in the past meetings we had, and as early as Graz, I have been saying we need to think about this in particular. How do we tie together what has been done from a research side, for instance, in regard to SAMP or within Civitas, what have POLIS and ERRIN be doing, and how do we bring this into a next level, in particular through the insertion in the TEN-T. And in the TEN-T today, we have a list in annex of urban nodes, but it is very limitative. It were the urban nodes that have been defining the network. And so we have to go beyond that. And I have heard already, of course, very clearly many stakeholders who came with in discussions with the definitions of cities, of functional urban areas, of let's say agglomerations or other definitions that are available. In particular, all of you to point at the links between cities and the peri-urban or with the rural areas, and how do you connect the city with the wider network. It's also what you have been doing in your definition that you proposed now on the slide. And I think that the strength is in that functionality of the definition, because the functionality of the definition will allow us to determine the nodes that should be in. It shall not only be the nodes in the annex that we have today. It shall be all the nodes on the core network, but it shall also be the nodes on the comprehensive network. And so we shall find back these functionalities in determining the exact list. And even I would go one step further, and this is a word that is also to my colleagues, for some of which will be listening in. I think that we even in some cases will adapt slightly the comprehensive network to take certain nodes into the network if they are not there today, because we should not miss any of the urban nodes with these functionalities, because we have to bring together the functioning of these nodes with the TEN-T. So it's not one direction, it's bi-directional. I hope that I make myself very clear. We are not going to start purely from the CEF core and comprehensive. We are also going to have a critical look whether the definition will oblige us to have some adaptations here or there on the network, which might be necessary. And I am aware myself of very few, but there are some of these urban nodes which correspond to the definitions and which are not on the TEN-T today. Not many, but there are. And that comes, of course, then to what you have been describing in the slides. It's still with Jürgen and Reinhard on these functions. And I think that has been taken up also then by Vivian and Koen because afterwards we then come also to translate that in the broader package on innovation, what needs to be done with these cities or FUAs or agglomerations once they are defined, and what can we do with them. So it's not only the definition, which was the first part of the presentations, but it's also afterwards the innovation part, what can we do with them, or the intermodality part, which Koen was also highlighting too. Can we ensure that we get fully on board with these nodes, with these cities, to do the functioning between the cities and the rural or the hinterland and the interconnectivity, or even within the cities, which was the presentation that Cédric also made, because some of these agglomerations are a conglomerate of different, I would say, attractivity poles with their functions. And I come again back to the starting point of Reinhard and Jürgen, the functions which are important. And so you may very well have complex cities like Paris, which have the need to reflect this functionality within the urban node. And that is as important, I would say, as in between the urban nodes. So let me give a few examples. If I take Halle Leipzig, an example in Germany, it's in fact a conglomerate of two cities with the airport in the middle in between them. And how do we link that? How do we define that correctly? What are the functions related to these two cities? Careful that also when we define that we do not make any mistake in such a way that it would exclude anything. So you could define two cities, you could define one FUA, but you could also, I mean, we should not make the one choice or the other exclusive so that we miss anything on that. Let me give a second example. Rotterdam, as a big harbor, has quite a number of cities included with the port interwoven into it. I could also cite Hamburg or Marseille or Le Havre or Antwerp. Doesn't matter. There are many. Even the smaller urban areas which are port nodes sometimes have several cities along, and we should be able to grasp through the definition also these very complex realities that are needed to be reflected and to be justified afterwards on that. Then still to fill in a little bit more, we have been discussing also in our house in the past years a lot on freight, but we see a renewal for the attention of passengers. And the city-to-city nodes can, as we see it also now with the COVID crisis, fulfill an important dimension as well. And so we should be careful that we also through the definition, but the revision, that we take the complexity of the cities on both freight and passengers. For freight, we need to make sure that we have last mile connectivity, sufficient terminal capacity, perhaps smaller, assemble points or consolidation points. All of this is needed and is not developed a lot in the TEN-T today. We also need to do the same for the passenger side, where until now we were always a little bit struggling with the urban nodes. What is exactly what we want with urban nodes and TEN-T? Is this connectivity in the main stations, being rail, bus, being perhaps also linked to it the more dynamic modes of biking and walking, etc. Sometimes some infrastructure is needed for that as well. The pooling and so on of cars. So that needs to be grasped better in the new definition. Last point, Françoise, before I get back to you, because you mentioned a lot of articles, but not one. So allow me also this suggestion. Because I found you were very creative in citing all these articles and making suggestions, and I think it's necessary because, of course, it needs the complexity of the whole. But I had expected perhaps that you would also talk about the special governance work. We have this chapter in the TEN-T where we have the European coordinators and the corridors coming in. And in fact, in most of these corridors, they were cited also by Koen, for instance. We have also a so-called forum, and in itself, the forum was in your proposals as well, or in your presentation. But what I regretted a bit, and which could be done, is we had for all of the corridors, we had also working groups on the urban nodes. And this has been an exercise which was quite, how would I say, on various intensities. Some of the corridors went into quite some depth to analyze the links between the urban nodes, and others less. Something that we could be doing better in the future of the TEN-T. I mean, I think that urban nodes, in order to get also a bit of a help, not only from programs like Civitas and SUMP and so forth, not only from Horizon Europe or from also counseling sites like Elena, but also within the TEN-T proper, within the TEN-T governance that we have, could benefit from a reinforcement and a better integration into the structures that are there. That Françoise, your reflections here today are very useful. You have made concrete language available, and it comes at an early stage. So we are still at the beginning of the impact assessment, and it is very useful to have a dialogue with POLIS and with ERRIN, because you are directly into the heart of this work. And we need to do it correctly, especially now with the COVID crisis, that we can come out in a way that improves the getting back better, which you hear very often, with a very concrete role for public transport, and not just to burden our cities with further individual car passenger traffic. So that is certainly the credo that is also here in the European Commission. Green Deal is our leading threat, and I hope that we can deliver jointly with that together with you. Thank you, Françoise, and back.
Thank you very much, Herald, for your comments. So I understand that you endorse this recommendation. No, more seriously, what we try to do is to work very concretely on the current regulation and try to strengthen some point missing. Of course, to strengthen urban nodes in the different forum, of course, it's something very important for us too, but we didn't start with that because we start with the guidelines and the regulation, but the forum should be a very powerful, interesting lever to strengthening urban nodes, priority and research innovation, of course. I would like to ask you, before to open the floor to the audience, if my colleagues have some reaction or comments. No? It was, yes, Koen, please.
Yes, thank you, Françoise, and thank you, Herald, for your nice words for the work. I think it's very useful, very good to keep on communicating about the common issues. For example, we have in the EGTC Rhine-Alpine, the Rhine-Alpine talks last month about smart mobility for passengers. Next Friday, smart mobility for freight. We have had a close contact with Pavel Wojciechowski, and I think that should be, let's say, a very good basis for your ideas and your comments, and also your calling out for urban nodes more in the corridor framework. So thank you very much for that. I have one question about, you talked, of course, about the Green Deal. We have also something about the pollutant side of other modes like shipping and rail. And for shipping, for example, NOx or nitrogen is a very big problem, especially in the Netherlands. So that's what's your opinion about that, together with the alternative fuel infrastructure directive, of course, which is published by the European Commission.
Or not? Yeah. Okay. No, thank you, Koen, for your question. Alongside, of course, what we are doing here on the 10T revision and others that I cited in the beginning, all our colleagues in the Commission are also working on their, let's say, legislations and revisions. So also the Air Quality Directive will certainly be scrutinized in the coming years, and I have seen the work starting for a revision, which will take them a bit longer than us, so they will come after us. But you're right, Koen, NOx, SOx and particulates are just as important. And we know that certain of the solutions that we put forward will contribute to that. Some of the alternative fuels more than others in the short run, and let's say in the passing through to completely carbon neutral. So yes, but there's a real discussion ongoing on that. There's a real discussion ongoing, and it's a little bit the same like we discussed now here, Françoise, the very particular discussion on the definition, for instance, of urban nodes. We have to impact assess that from our side. We have to see what is the best solution. As I said, we do not want to take a decision lightly and then afterwards have an issue that we have chosen in the one or the other direction and do not get to the crux of it, which is the functionality. So in fact, the definition should help the functionality, not the other way around. Otherwise, we are afterwards perhaps on the wrong track. When we defined the methodology in 2010, around 10-11, we had the same problem. And we had to have a multi-criteria definition. So we had a number of inhabitants, but also we had to refer to other, let's say, keys for defining the list of nodes that formed the core network. So we couldn't be doing it only on inhabitants. We had to already at the time to look at for instance, having also all capitals in. We had looking at the ASPON Atlas at the time. And I expect that something similar will happen if we are going to go into the definition of urban nodes. It will possibly be, like your definition that you propose here today, a more complex definition that is pointing at, in particular, the functionalities. So yes, going back, Koen, it will be also looking at the different alternative fuels. And one of the things is to link AFID with 10T revision and make sure that it functions together very well in urban nodes and beyond urban nodes. Back to you, Françoise.
Yes, it will be a challenge also to link the new directive with this regulation. I'm done to my colleagues Ivo and Pierrot to ask them if we have questions in this chat, please. Because I didn't.
Yes.
Yes.
One question of Jörg Saalbach from CTG Rhine-Alpine. It's quite specific, so it's the question of how processes like T 2.0 can help to trigger modal shift from plane to train. But maybe the question should be a bit more, I answered more broadly and say maybe as part of the functionality of the urban nodes is the long distance modal shift part of that of the target that the urban nodes should also envisage.
Hi, Ivo. Good afternoon. Yes, I mean the short answer is yes. The longer answer can be more complex, but it's for sure that we are reflecting on this due to the crisis, and what we see getting and taking shape is that all efforts that we are all together collectively as member states doing since already around 2007 is slowly going to pay off by the creation of a number of missing links. And thereby we are redesigning the transport map of Europe, and certain city pairs will become very attractive. So let me give an example again. Now that in Germany, the construction between Germany and Denmark, the construction of the Fehmarn will start. 2028 shall be fully also with the access routes. So you get a different city pair between, let's say, Copenhagen, Hamburg, and Berlin. And you can have different functions related to that. And I indeed now come immediately to you, Françoise, ERRIN-Polis. This shall translate into functions in urban nodes. I mean, we're not constructing the infrastructure for the sake of it or for the pleasure of it. the fact that we will have those kind of links will give additional functionalities which we didn't have before. And so flights will be replaced by, for instance, city pair trains like the TEE 2.0. But I am also thinking about the wider consequences of those kind of links for the nodes that are alongside such a TEN-T line. Rail Baltica ready in 2026. It means a complete different connectivity for the cities in the Baltics, not only the three capitals, but also other cities in between, or also for Berlin and Warsaw, which are connecting to that. So you have to see more complex. And very often in the past, the view was too limited. It can be that certain links have effects which are much wider than just the link. So if you look at the enormous controversy on Lyon-Turin in France and between France and Italy, the functionality that it will give is enormous. I mean, it will connect Paris to Milano, but it will also have all kind of regional links. So I think the answer is short answer is yes, but it is also a real game changer for the urban nodes. And not only the main, and this is not capitals only. I refuse to see this as only capital to capital. This is much more complex. This is capital to capital, but also all the others, the regions and the smaller nodes profiting from that. Otherwise, it's a no-go.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Ivo, another question from the chat, perhaps?
There are no further questions. So there's a comment regarding long-distance coach that is also a concern, also shared by POLIS. We worked with IRU on a coach in the city statement, which is launched this week as well. It's a mode that is often overlooked, but is important as a carrier of people. So I don't know if you have any comments about that, Herald, Ruijters, about coach as a mode.
Thank you, Ivo. I fully agree. I mean, in certain links, you will not have the possibility of having a high speed or an upgraded speed rail link, and coach is a fully fledged component and should be a fully fledged component of the whole policy. Yeah, and also to be shaped into the city dimension. And where do you connect these coach links? Perhaps it has been too long a niche of let's say low cost carrying between some, I don't know, back road of a railway station to some other back road at the other railway station on the other end. This can be shaped a bit better, I think. I mean, it's something that is a fully fledged part of mobility.
Okay. I am very sorry, but time is flying, and we have to conclude this first part of the session. But I'm pretty sure that we will have other opportunities to pursue the discussion with you, Herald. Thank you for having accepted our invitation to have this discussion today and to comment our work. So we will pursue on this work. We know that there is still a long way to go before the adoption of the regulation. So we will pursue this work very concretely. And if any members of police would like to join this task force, you are welcome. Cooperation is key, especially in this area. I would like also to thank you very warmly, my colleagues of the task force, for their work, for having dedicated time and effort despite a busy agenda. But I think it's worth. So thank you for all of you too. And now we will jump immediately to the second part of the session. Bye bye. Thank you, Herald. Thank you all. I am calling my speakers on the virtual stage now.
Yes, we will need some people to leave the stage and some others to enter. Yes, and then we're set for the second part of the session.
Do you have the music, something to know, to introduce? No? No music? So, okay. So I'm very happy to, oh, I am a microphone. So could you mute your microphone, please? Kun, yes, please, thank you. Very happy to welcome you for the second part of this session, for the presentation now of projects led by local and regional authorities who make the TEN-T a reality. I would like to present you Annette van Leer for the province of Zuid-Holland, Koen Beekhuis from Loendersloot Group, Clement Gostich from the Regional Development Agency for Ljubljana of the Ljubljana Urban Region, Henk Nijhuis from the city of Nijmegen, and Geert Ritsema from Arnhem-Nijmegen City Region. We will start immediately with the presentation of Annette. Annette, you will present the Clinch project and share with us a set of recommendations how to stimulate the greening of the existing inland waterways fleet. So Annette, the floor is yours. Thank you. You are on mute and you have to share your presentation. You are still, yes.
Yeah, I thought I was sharing, but I'll try again. I don't know why he's making a problem right now. Oh, I'm very sorry about this. He doesn't want to share, apparently. But I can just tell without showing the presentation then, I suppose.
Yeah, no, but maybe if you close the presentation, open it again, and then try sharing, it might work. Yep.
Okay, I'll try that.
Yep. And then also...
Okay, so I closed it, I open it again. Let me see, I go, and now I'll try. No, it won't share. I'm very sorry about that. I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong.
Ivo, could you help Annette, or perhaps I can try to share the presentation? You okay? Because I have the presentation too. If
second, and then I'll.
Okay. I'll try. Oh wait, here it is.
But
you
can
see
okay,
Annette.
Good.
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Good. Okay, well, sorry about that. Yes, I am Annette van Leer. I work for the province of South Holland, and I am the program manager of Clinch. Clinch is clean inland shipping. In the hour before, we heard quite some talking about sustainability, about mitigating the effects of pollution by ships, cars, everything. And with Clinch, we try to give more insights in what the actual emission is of the inland shipping. Right. We are a consortium of 18 partners from 4 countries. We are funded by the LIFE project, by the LIFE fund from the European Union, and together we make this research possible. And the research is about demonstrating the environmental impact of emission reduction technologies, alternative fuels, and online power supply in the real world conditions. And that makes Clinch different from other research projects on what emissions actually do, because mostly the emissions are measured in laboratory settings, and we measure as the ships are sailing along our rivers. We, based on the measurements on the different ships, we develop models on how the reduction could be applied to the whole existing European fleet, and what that would mean in the benefits gained for air improvement. And with all the information that we thus gather, we can also assist shippers, skippers, harbors, policymakers in deciding on what policies would be best in their particular situation. For the onshore power supply, first a few words on that. We have a demonstration of that in the cities of Ghent and Nijmegen. There are some public OPS cabins and private quays. On the private quays, we are trying to promote OPS as a service, and that means that the providers that do this come up with all sorts of added features, like adding a security camera or even a delivery point for internet shopping. They try to make the use of the cabinets as attractive as possible for the skippers. We see that often OPS is not used. Hopefully these kind of features will attract more shippers to use it. And what also will help, we hope, that at least in the Netherlands, and what I understand also in other countries, from January, the taxation on the power used will be skipped, so it will be more attractive also for the skippers to use it. When it comes to the measuring on the ships, there's quite some alternative techniques and fuels that is used. You can see them spelled out here. We have in total 43 ships, and it's different types. It's oil tankers, container carriers, general cargo ships. These are the ships that you might see sailing our rivers with the Clinch flag, all collecting the data as we speak. And just to give you a short idea of how that works, because maybe it sounds very easy, but it was quite a challenge to get all the measurements up in the air. Excuse me, up in the air. So what you see here on the right-hand side is all the inputs that we measure, that we use to draw our conclusions upon. On the left, you see the measurement installed in the various ships, which is all collected and transmitted to databases. Shippers can also see for their own ships what the results are, so it helps them write on in their own behavioral aspects of how they sail their ships. And on the other hand, all the data is collected for the models that we are making. Just to give you an idea of what it looks like, this is 1 day's measurement for one particular ship. And what you see already is here that all the measurements go up and down, and you see that it's not very stable. And so you see that where in laboratory conditions, engine load will be at a constant figure. Here you see that in practice, as a ship is sailing, it goes up and down all the time. And this means that on different parts of their journey, they have different results on their emissions. So here is an example. This is a ship which has a SCR, which is a how do you call it again? A catalyst. And you see that with the engine speed going up, the emission goes down. It's the red dots. And when the SCR is turned on, you see the green dots, and you see immediately that emissions are much lower and also a bit more stable. What you also see in this picture is what emissions should be to acquire certain levels, or to reach certain levels like CCNR2 or the AU stage 5. And you see here that this ship with the SCR on more or less makes it to CCNR 2 emission standards. So what we do with Clinch, we have all these measurements per ship. We measure what the emission actually is, so not the standard, but in real life as it is sailing along. There is various pollutants that are measured. It's the NOx, it's the particulate matter, and you can, in the end result, the policymakers can adjust and calculate weighting factors to prioritize to their own needs, so they can really gear it toward their own project or policy objectives. Clinch is also connected to the Dutch Green Deal. There's this European Green Deal, but the Dutch also have a Green Deal on sea and inland shipping and ports. By 2050, inland shipping must be climate neutral and emission free. Well, that is quite a challenge to get there. So there's various instruments put in place or are being put in place to get there. These instruments should be there by 2024. It involves a sustainability fund, which will be based upon a labeling system, which is based on actual emissions instead of type of engine, which is usually used nowadays. And this labeling system will be developed with help of the Clinch outcomes. So it's very nice to see that immediately what we do in Clinch will have its effect on other projects and policy measures as well. So just to summarize, we test technologies, real-life conditions. We carry out the monitoring activities in real time, so get a picture of the environmental gains for the technologies and the clean fuels. Based upon the measurements on individual ships or per type of technology, we develop scenarios trying to present what it means for the whole European fleet if all ships would take on one or more of the measures that we measured. We look at the OPS cabinets, Ghent and Nijmegen. And in addition, we also have some onshore measurements of ship emissions on the Rhine at Lobit and also in Duisburg. So it's not only the measurements directly leaving the ship, but also in this project we see what it does on the banks of the rivers the ships are sailing. We will present our recommendations and policy tools at our END conference, that would be in 30 September 2021. By now we have finished all the measurements, and now it's mainly the university and the research institutions that are very busy working on all the data that we collected to come up with the models and presentations. So we hope to see you in September to present you everything that we have have discovered. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Annette, for this presentation. So I understood that infrastructure is important, but we have also to consider the cleaning of the inland waterway fleet if we want to reach the goals of the Green Deal. And no doubt that the outcome of this project will support the decision of the decision makers in this field. I would like to open the floor to question. Do we have question for Annette? Because I don't see the chat. Sorry. Ivo, do we have question, or I can ask a question perhaps to Annette on, especially to perhaps to link.
There are no questions in the chat, so please go ahead.
Perhaps to link your presentation with the first part of the session on TEN-T. You know that TEN-T today is about infrastructure, is about connectivity and services. We have these 3 layers. And do you think that your project we can provide recommendation to improve these 3 layers?
Excuse me, to improve the
infrastructure, and the services, not the connectivity, but the infrastructure and the services?
Yes, well, it's mainly when it comes to the infrastructure with the the onshore power supply. I think that is really an infrastructural part of the project where we can, with a best practice guide, we can assist harbors, ports, municipalities on finding what would be proper solutions in their specific case. Where it comes to the ships, it's not so much the infrastructure as what the shippers can do themselves to improve on lowering the emission of their own ships.
Okay. So thank you. Now we will. I will give the floor to Coen Mekers from Landersloop Group, and you will present the role and the influence of an European grouping for territorial cooperation in large European railway networks. And immediately, if I can, Koen, I would like to ask you if you can link also your presentation with the revision of the regulation, and to tell us based on your experiences, we need an evolution or a revolution in this regulation. And I know that you can do that because I already have the pleasure to read your presentation. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. I believe an evolution is at hand, instead of a revolution. I think we should think about which modalities we would like to give way and which modalities we like to cut short in the future. But considering all the actors that are currently playing on this market, I believe that there is a strong sense for more cohesion among each other, but not a revolution in the sense that this should be a completely Europe-directed program, for instance.
Thank you. Could you share your screen for your presentation?
Yes.
And I hope you will not have technical problems.
You can see this?
Absolutely, thank you. Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I prepared a little bit of a long presentation, so I will just quickly cut through a few slides to make up for some time. First of all, a little bit of a personal background. I'm not a complete specialist in the topic of TEN-Ts. I have studied political science at the Universiteit of Nijmegen in the Netherlands, and afterwards I went to Bologna to study international relations at the Università di Bologna. And since January 2019, I work as a mobility consultant at Landersloop Group. we as a company don't do that much actually with 10T development, although we did get involved in the development and planning of the urban environment surrounding the train station in the city of Nijmegen. So that was a bit of expertise that we gained on urban node development. Yeah, why this topic? It's mainly because of personal interest. Quite frankly, I like trains, so that's quite easy to say. I'm a frequent traveler, and I also feel that some environmental concerns especially with flying. And from that perspective, I really think that high-speed rail could be an alternative for air travel in the near future. And from this experience and this background, I went to look at what topic it would be, and soon it came out to be looking at the 10T corridors, because we have this regulation in place. It's been around for, well, since 1992. The Maastricht Treaty was already a first notation of corridor development. And I was looking at mainly the political viewpoint from it. So to what extent does the EGTC actually have a role and a say in this development of the Rhine-Alpine corridor? This was mainly the corridor that I focused on because, one, I'm from the Netherlands, and two, I studied in Italy. And during my studies, I frequently asked myself, why can't I go by train to the Netherlands? Of course, it's possible, but it takes a long time. It's quite expensive. And for me, it ended up me buying a car and going back and forth and taking as many people as I could through car sharing apps such as Snapcar. Not only to pay for the cost, of course, but also to share the trip. And well, while I'm at it, emitting carbon dioxide, I could at least do it with another person next to me. I think a differentiation between the transport of goods and people is necessary at the start, because the 10T is currently highly focused on transport of goods. And as Herald Ruijters said in the previous session part, that we should focus also on passenger transport. So that's something we should keep in mind. Well, I'm just going to quickly study over these. During my research, I did some interviews with members of the EGTC. I did a few interviews with railway infrastructure managers such as ProRail, and I spoke to some EU legislators. Well, the initial idea was actually, why can I easily travel to Italy? And then I started funneling the idea, because we know the tracks are already there and they're getting better day by day. We also see the strong drive towards less polluting modes of transport. And the EU has already set the agenda, but still there's a few setbacks, bottlenecks that prohibit me to easily travel through Europe by train at this point, and fast as well, to make it a proper alternative to air travel. And from this point, I started adopting the political viewpoint. So why is this not happening? And then secondly, what do regional governments play in this development? Since there was this oncoming new instrument that's called the EGTC, the European Grouping for Territorial Cooperation. And I tried to focus on that instrument and see what could they do, what could be their role in the development of 10T corridors. And well, in short, railway development really sounded like a mostly domestic affair. And what we see in the past, in history, that it's predominantly a national and regional interest, which means there's not that much cross-border cooperation on that sense. You can see this on the flurry of technical standards and different railway infrastructure managers and different operational ideas. And it makes it hard to get a train and drive across the border, because simply it wouldn't work on the other side, because they have a different voltage or a different train controlling system. So we see that this is historically developed this way, and now we need to break it up. And I will slide through these. We see that the EU already had a big, well, push towards this, and it started actually off from the Treaty of Rome, in fact. The establishment of the European Community already spoke about a free flow of people and goods. And this was further refined through the Treaty of Maastricht, and then the directives and the railway packages, to build more legislation, to develop institutions such as the European Railway Agency, and to slowly introduce the idea of competition. I'll come back to competition later, but we'll keep it for now. So this EGTC that was developed, it is an instrument that is developed for cross-border interregional cooperation. And what is unique about this EGTC is that it's not just an agglomeration of regional governments that work together, but it's actually a single legal body with its own funding, which makes it a little bit more powerful of an actor in the political field, both at the EU level as at the national level. And then the EGTC Rhine-Alpine is the case. It's very important because it's for the Rhine-Alpine corridor, of course, which is the corridor that I showed a few slides back. It starts from the port of Rotterdam and it goes to it ends up all the way through Germany and Switzerland, Italy, into the port of Genova, and nowadays also the port of Antwerp is included, so Belgium takes part in it as well in that sense. And it's a highly multimodal corridor. We have highways, we have the Rhine River, we have a large share of airports along the road, and we have the railways, of course. And me personally, I focus mainly on these railways. And one of the key actors in this is developing and connecting the nodes within this corridor. So we see that there are some regional problems. First of all, it's about the timetabling. So if you want to fit, for instance, a long distance service across the corridor, you need to make way in the timetabling of regional services. And the second one is concerns with noise pollution. In the previous session, we already spoke about the Lyon-Turin connection. The TAF, the Treno Alto Velocità, and that is also a project that has been burdened by many concerns about mainly noise pollution and landscape pollution. Furthermore, we see bottlenecks along the corridor, such as the development of the nodes themselves, but also simple as number of tracks and the implementation of ERTMS, the European train operating system, that is not yet